welcome to Parallel Lives.
I'm Dimmer, and this is Levi.
Hello.
Today we're talking about how to explain maladaptive daydreaming to friends and family so that normal people can understand what you're talking about. Our guests today are Emery, a 19-year-old art student from Canada.
Hello.
Nymph, a 25-year-old software engineer, and Abraham, a 21-year-old dental student from Africa. Yeah, let's just start with the obvious question. Why or what motivated you to tell someone about your maladaptive daydreaming? Like, what made you want to share it with somebody?
I just like to talk about myself. I like talking about this, so I would just tell my friends because I like to talk about myself. I really can't get more deep than that. That's kind of as deep as it goes for me.
As good a reason as any, I guess.
So for me personally, I just kind of wanted somebody to know what I was going through, and also, I guess maladaptive daydreaming, it affects a lot of the time when I want to be away from people, and I was getting into fights with a few people over it, and I didn't know how to explain to them. It's like, hey, I really need to do this alone. And I think that was one of my big motivations because then once I was able to explain to them, hey, this is what's happening and this is why, I need this certain amount of time away from people locked in my room, they were able to better understand. So that was a big motivation for me personally.
Nice. So yeah, I can relate to Nymph a lot because that was the main reason behind telling people. But I have told different people, so I have different motivations separately. So when I told my mom, I basically felt so guilty about not sharing stuff with her, and I told a friend. I told three friends. All of them, I just needed some understanding from friends. I just needed someone to listen, and I told my therapist, which I had to do because obviously.
I think with MD, it's also, it's a lot of baggage to carry around and to not
Yeah.
tell anyone. So, if you keep this thing to yourself, then, and I mean, this applies to just everyone. You can keep this secret to yourself, but at the end of the day, it just feels like you want to tell someone because it's such a big thing.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, it's such a huge part of your life. You want to share that with somebody, at least one person.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, especially where Abraham had to talk about it to several different people, and the motivation for each is going to be different. So who did you tell, and why did you pick them? Abraham said, the therapist, I kind of had to. But as for, who else you spoke to, why them?
Basically, my mom. She's the closest thing I have to as a support pillar in my life. So I felt guilty about not telling her something that consumes a lot of my time and causing me just as many issues as benefits. As for my friends, I literally only have three friends all my life. So if I'm going to tell someone something that deep, they're the only thing I have.
Nymph, who did you talk to?
So for me, my mother, also like Abraham, I mean, I'm really close with my mother. So it was honestly, if I wanted somebody to know, she would be one of the first people I would want to tell. Also, she saw me grow up with it. And a lot of times we would be confused about it. We would get into fights because of it. And I think looking back and finally understanding and recontextualizing why I was, behaving the way I was, I think it gave me a lot of understanding, and being able to discuss that with my mother really helped me cope with it. And regarding the friends, I did say, I mean, a few of them, they all have their own mental health struggles. So it was like something kind of a bonding thing, like, hey, this is what I struggle with, this is what you struggle with, and, we can help each other cope with it together. It was kind of like, building your own personal community. kind of situation. And for my therapist, I mean, like Abraham said, like I kind of had to, but a huge part of it was I wanted her to know so that she can help me through it, and she has been helping me through it. So yeah, a lot of it was just really finding someone who could understand me with this trouble that I have, not just outside of it.
And Emery, same question. Who'd you talk to, and importantly, like why did you pick them?
Well, okay. Abraham reminded me that I forgot that I told my therapist. I didn't tell that because I wanted to talk to just ramble, but I just told her because it's relevant. With my friends, I can't remember how many friends I told. But I mentioned it to at least two, probably three. I probably mentioned daydreaming excessively to a bunch of them. Like the word maladaptive daydreaming and explaining what that meant, at least for sure two.
Was there anything particular about those friends that made you want to talk to them over anyone else?
They were my closest in real life, which is just why. So I talked to them the most, and I talked to them about my issues the most and stuff. So I was just the closest to them and the most open with them. And in general, they were the ones like we did a lot of swapping of information about ourselves, especially kind of like more mental health type of information. We like with those friends, we just do a lot of swapping of that, casual swapping of information. Like, yeah, I get an anxiety of this, rather than less of like venting and supporting each other. We just do that conversation, like relating, swapping information. So I just did that kind of stuff with them a lot, and they were the ones that I talked the most about those type of things. And they're the ones I like to info dump the most too. So that was partially just me info dumping about it.
So you already had a pretty supportive, close history with them.
I wouldn't say supportive exactly, but yeah.
How difficult or easy was the decision for you to tell other people about your MD, and for how long did you actually consider telling people?
So for me, it was actually kind of hard because when I found out about maladaptive daydreaming, a part of me was kind of skeptical because it's not an official diagnosis. So that was a huge reason why I didn't want to tell anyone at first because I felt like, am I making this up? Do I really have it? How do I really know? That kind of thing. So it was really hard. I think it took me a year to know about it before I even had the courage to tell my mother and then my therapist. And then once I talked to my therapist, that's when I actually had the courage to tell anybody else because up until that point, I was kind of worried that I guess, making problems up from nothing. So yeah, it was surprisingly hard, especially since I personally don't have trouble telling people um, things about myself. But this one was a bit of a doozy.
I can relate to Nymph. I was very skeptical about it at first. I didn't go to therapy specifically for maladaptive daydreaming. I went to it because I had a major depressive disorder. It was really severe. So I spent about a year and a half in therapy trying to get treated for that. Then I spoke about maladaptive daydreaming because it occupied so much of my time that my therapist actually pressured me to tell her about that. So yeah, I explained to her what it is or what I think it is, and she didn't. She's a CBT specialist, so she didn't really know much about it. But she just encouraged me to tell my mom, which I did. But I didn't actually tell my mom. She's the one who told her because I'm socially anxious and I'm terrible at conversations. So she told her, but then my mom said that it's okay, you can talk to me about it. But yeah, my mom's very religious, very African. So once we got home, she actually destroyed all the mirrors in the house because she thought that demonic possession and stuff. Because she thought my son is possessed, and yeah, she destroyed all the mirrors in the house because she thought it's a demonic gateway. So yeah, that was terrible. But she gave me a lot of sympathy, and she supported me all the way. Then I became a lot more comfortable with my maladaptive daydreaming, so I decided to tell my friends. I told one, went horribly wrong. He's like a jock. He's an alpha. He's very confident. He doesn't like to, he doesn't like to give sympathy or, but I told two other friends and it went really well. So yeah, I thought it was gonna be go just as horribly as it did with the first one. But yeah, the difficulty was that I felt the awareness, the awareness of mental health here is almost non-existent. So I threw myself in the river in there. So yeah, and I had to know obviously it was a one-way street. Once you tell anybody about it, there's no coming back. So yeah, I was already tearing myself apart because I'm already anxious and all. So yeah, that was my experience.
How long did that take? Like after you told your mom and your first friend, and it kind of went a little badly. Like did you immediately talk to your other friends, or did it take you like a while to like build up to that?
I told my mom at about 18 years old. Then after about 3 months, I was already treated of the major depressive disorder, so I wasn't really like, I was mainly positive and I was well. So I decided to tell that friend, and it went horrible. Then it took me like 2 years. It was last year actually. I told all of them, so the both of them last year. So it took me about 2 years.
Yeah, no, I think it can get quite difficult, but at least you did have the support from some of your friends at least. Amory?
I think my first in real life friend that I brought it up pretty much the moment after I found out what it was. Yeah, so like I just learned about it and I was like, oh hey, I think I have this to her like pretty much right away. Like I mean she wasn't exactly supportive. Like I didn't get emotional support, but she knew I was fucked in the head. Kind of I mean she didn't support me, but she knew I was fucked. So it wasn't no big deal. Like I was used to telling her things. So like yeah, I think I have this. With my other friend, I didn't. It wasn't like me considering for a while whether I should tell him or not. It's just that at the time when I first found it, I wasn't really close to him. We didn't become close until like I think a year later or something. Through completely unrelated means, and it just didn't really occur to me. Like it wasn't something considered. Like it wasn't. It's not a big deal for me to tell them. Like it's talking about things like that is as much as a big deal with those friends as telling them that I went shopping. And in general, I don't really care about telling people. Like I never telling people things about anything that doesn't really cause me anxiety. Like I don't care if people know. I don't worry about stuff. Like I'll tell random strangers I'm autistic. I don't really give a fuck. Things like that. Like I just don't feel like saying factually what's wrong, like without actually going into how it affects me. That's never bothered me in any way. So like going into how MD affects me would be a different thing. But just saying I have it like doesn't bother me in any way, even to a stranger. Like I wouldn't care about telling it to a stranger. So there wasn't really that time a deliberation of whether I should tell them or not. Like with him, it was just relevant to the conversation, and I just bobbed in. The other one, I was just like, oh, just discover this. I'm going to tell her.
That's interesting too. That's like the exact opposite of Nymph, who really went back and forth, and it was a what'd you say? A doozy.
I did say that. I mean, I guess for me, it was less about telling someone and more about if I'm making a factual statement or not. It's like, am I just imagining this? Do I really have it? How do I know?
So where it came up so naturally with Emery and their friends. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it doesn't sound like, it came up, it was relevant. There wasn't a whole lot of thought that went into it. But for you other two, like, did you imagine how that conversation was going to go beforehand? How did you think it was gonna go?
Personally, I did. I did, try to come up with scenarios. How can I best explain it? I was Googling, resources and uh, language I could use. But honestly, the way I imagined it would go is pretty much how it went, is a lot of confusion. I expected, especially my mother, to be very confused about what it was, because she's not very active in mental health spaces, and mental health awareness is not very um, common from where I grew up and where she grew up. So I expected a lot of confusion, and that's basically what I got. But I was expecting, honestly, for her to say, "Oh no, you're making it up," or "Oh no, you're creating problems out of a molehill. Don't worry about it." And she was surprisingly compassionate in that even though she didn't understand a lot of it, she still, tried to understand it, and she took it in a stride. And it did take her a month to really understand what was going on, but it I imagined it to be a lot worse than it turned out to be.
And you, Abraham, like what were you expecting from your friends and your mother, or even your therapist?
Well, I think we can all relate to this. I've constantly daydreamed about telling people for about 4 years up until I did. Every scenario I come up with is basically negative because I wasn't in the best mental health shape. So the way expected the conversation with my mom to go is pretty gruesome. I expected her to lock me up or call me crazy or anything like that. Um, yeah, I only saw negative opening that route. But with my therapist, I mean, hello, she's my therapist. What are you gonna do to me? Like, I'm paying you. So I obviously thought it was gonna go well, and it did go well. She didn't actually help me with it because she didn't really know how to deal with it. She just told me to encourage me to tell people, and yeah, that's all she did. With my friends, I it went exactly as I expected it to be. The guy I told, the jock, I know he's an asshole, but he's a good friend. So yeah, I expected him to be an asshole, and he was an asshole. My two other friends are very sympathetic. They're very, very sympathetic. They have a lot of empathy, but one of them didn't understand it. Actually, she's someone who has never been through a mental health issue. She had a great childhood and all that, so she didn't really understand me, but she gave me the sympathy I wanted. And my other friend went really well.
I kind of spoke for you at the beginning there, Emery. I don't know. Would you care to elaborate?
I don't ever daydream about myself in my life, so I never really imagined how it might go, especially since I kind of just when like when I told my first friend, I went into that conversation with the purpose of talking to her, but with my other friend it just came up and I just said it. Like I don't really think before I say things, I just say them. So I really with her I might have thought, I can't remember, I might have thought about how she might react, but I probably didn't that much. With my other friend I definitely wouldn't have because it just kind of came out. How did they react? They reacted well. I mean, they reacted how I would say to anything. Like she was like with my one friend, she was like, "Oh yeah, okay, word, that makes sense." I mean, like both of like all my closest friends. Um, I think I have maybe two friends in real life who that don't have any mental health issues, and I'm not close to either of them. Every other single friend has something, like even yeah, some like I mean like my all my closest friends have like depression and or anxiety. At least I got friends with OCD, ADHD, intellectual disability, etc., etc. So that, which makes it nice because like my friends aren't do get this type type. But anyways, yeah, that one friend, she's like, okay, yeah, word, that makes sense. Because I just because of how I am. My other friend, he was like, oh, that's interesting, and he wanted to know more about it on like an academic level. He was like, oh, that's interesting. I want to learn more about that. Because he's very nerdy. So yeah, they were just kind of like, oh, cool, okay. They were just, yeah, kind of accepting them. I wasn't looking for sympathy. I didn't really get sympathy. That's like the thing is, I'm open with them in that kind of way, but I'm not open in a way that I'm getting sympathy. I'm not really getting sympathy and support. I'm just telling it in a swapping of information like you would do with any kind of things. So I didn't really get either of those, but they were like chill. And my therapist was like, oh, okay. Like I mentioned that about the ADHD, so it made sense to her probably. And she was like, oh, okay.
When you guys think about when you told the people in your life about your MD, what do you think worked best in the way that you told them, and what do you think didn't work at all, if it applies to you?
I mean, I think what worked best for me was one, at least for my mother, giving them resources. And with my friends, I think one of the key things that helped us or them understand what I was getting at was basically explain to them what it's not. So I think a lot of times when people, when I tried to explain to my mother, I think one of the first things she was worried about is that, oh, is this schizophrenia? Or, oh, do you need, ADHD diagnosis or something? And I think a lot of times I knew it wasn't that. So explaining from the angle of, hey, it's not this, and this is how it's different. And it kind of gave them a context or something they already knew, and then kind of, build a base on it and then jump off. Okay, it's different from, say, psychosis in this way. And I think they were able to better understand. Also, I think the other thing that helped my therapist and my mother understand it was why it was a problem, like how much time I was sinking into it. Because a lot of times their first instinct was to say, oh, I mean, that doesn't seem so bad. And I think when I tried to explain how it affected my life in a practical way, they were better able to grasp the actual problems and why I was even talking about it in the first place. So, yeah, I guess, giving them negative examples and explaining to them how it affected my life was, I think, a good base point for me. And if anybody else wants to tell their loved ones, I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah, I think what works best is that you need to prepare yourself beforehand for some questions. Like, I think we all get this question, like how and when did it start? So yeah, maybe go far back as you can go to pinpoint exactly when did it start. Mine was basically I was 6 years old, and it was the first day of primary school, and I was panicking. Also, you need to choose your approach depending on the person. So let's say that person is logical or nerdy, then you it would be best if you just give them like articles and stuff or YouTube videos to help them get a better grasp of what it is and what it is not. If it's a childhood friend, I did this with my childhood friend as well. I basically shared memories with them. So I was like, remember that time when we were role playing? That's basically what I do in my head. Yeah, that helps making the conversation smoother, and yeah, you will get them engaged in the conversation, and it won't be boring for them. If at any point they don't understand you or they don't take you seriously, I really can't help with that. I never got my like the friend that went horrible with. I never got him to understand it. I basically gave up and tell him, look, I just needed some space to vent, and yeah, he forgot about it.
For me, it's always kind of confusing because I mean, it sounds very straightforward to me. It's just like you daydream. Everyone daydreams, but you just do it a lot. Yeah, so it was. I just said, yeah, it's just like I daydream, but a lot, and I'm super obsessed with my characters and my world, and they seem to get that. Like everyone daydreams, so just taking those things that people have that like everyone daydreams and just explaining like, yeah, I just do that thing that everyone does, but I just do it constantly and a lot, and it affects my life. That seemed like, I mean, that seems really straightforward to me. So I'm always confused when people don't get maladaptive daydreaming because like it's just everyone daydreams. But yeah, just straightforward with that. They got that, and they like. I mean, both of those friends made characters and like stories. So with them, saying with them for me, because for me, it's my daydreams are very much like stories. It's about other characters, not my life. So just explaining that part to them, like that I'm really obsessed with it, and I'm always thinking about my characters and my stories. They like that made sense to them, and they understood what I meant. Yeah, so I think just with explaining it, just going off what they would experience, like with anxiety, if you want to explain anxiety, you say like, well, everyone gets worried occasionally about some things, but that happens if you have anxiety, you worry about everything. So just using the things that they experience and going off that to explain the MD, I find was by far the most effective.
Looking back, was there anything you would have done differently, a way you would have explained it differently, or different people that you would have told or not told? What would you change about how everything unfolded?
I think personally, I would maybe talk to my therapist before I told anybody else because I think talking through with her really helped me better explain it to my friends. And if I had that, I guess, experience and a more empathetic ear, I think I would have had a less struggle explaining it to my mother. I think personally, I would have done that. And other than that, I don't think anybody I told was a bad person to tell per se, but I did get a bit of a dismissive approach from one of my friends, and it almost feels like I never told her at all. It's like she never listened to me. So maybe I would backtrack that a little bit. But yeah, other than that, I don't think I did anything disastrous when it comes to telling people about it. I think most of them were pretty positive. At worst, they just didn't seem to care.
I should have followed Nim's advice on explaining to the people what it is not. Because if I had done that, my mother wouldn't have destroyed all the mirrors in the house, and she wouldn't have called me demonically possessed. She wouldn't have taken me to a lot of religious folks. I don't know what to call them. She even went as far as to plan an exorcism on me. So yeah, that went horrible. I should have explained to her that it is not to bring religion in it. You know, just it's natural. It's completely fine. I'm not crazy. I should have said that to her. And I don't really regret telling the asshole friend. I love the fact that I'm referring to him as the asshole friend. But yeah, no, he's not like he's an asshole, but he's like a good asshole. Like he wouldn't tell people that I'm crazy. Like he calls me crazy all the time because of that, but he doesn't like tell me to call me that in front of other people. That's why he's my friend, obviously. But yeah, he doesn't take me seriously. He thinks I'm faking it. He thinks I'm just procrastinating and I'm just lazy. He blames it on a lack of character on my behalf. So yeah, I don't really regret not I don't really regret telling him. But my two friends, I don't really think I should have done something differently. It really went so well. I didn't expect it to go so well. So yeah.
Didn't have quite as large an audience as we were expecting, but Halo did add a few in the chat.
Okay, so the first question is, did you use any resources online to help explain your maladaptive daydreaming? You know, such as YouTube videos, pictures, memes, studies, and so forth, when you were telling other people about it?
I definitely did. I think I found a YouTube video that goes well, it basically is more of a analysis of a movie, Secret Life of Walter Mitty, but I think it had a good explanation of what maladaptive daydreaming is. And I think that was a video that I sent to my mother. And when it comes to my therapist, I like bombarded her with the research that I had studied before coming to her. So I sent her basically the first research and few of the recent ones. I think most of them by Ellie Somer. So I bombarded her. But I think other than my mother and the therapist, I didn't really send any articles to my friends. But I think by that point I had enough of a understanding of how to explain the condition to them. So I didn't really need to. But yeah, I think for my therapist that was really useful because I think she's read those studies before we even, physically talked, because I emailed it to them, and that helped a lot because then we were both kind of coming from the same basic understanding. So yeah, I abused those resources to their fullest extent, and it was really helpful. Highly recommend it.
And the thing with the official research from Dr. Eli Sommer is that you're sort of backing it up with science. So it's not just
Right.
something that's just on the internet or something that you made up or something. It's like, no, there's actual research out there.
Right. I think it gives it legitimacy. Like, hey, I'm not just making it up. There are actual doctors and researchers and psychology professionals who are saying that this exists.
And Abraham, what about you?
This is actually unfortunate for me because I tried looking up some research in my language. It's non-existent. I didn't find any resources or any researches that are in my language. So I didn't really have that option available for me. But I know I should have translated it and maybe told my therapist about it. But the thing is, I wasn't really that well mentally when I was about to tell my therapist. I had literally just come out of hospitalization because I don't want to really get into it. So I just come out of that, and I thought that it's a very good step to just come clean with everything I have and tell her. So I don't really have that option. But with my friend, when I was 2 years later, I did use a lot of research. Thankfully, he speaks English, so yeah, I use those resources. They're mostly YouTube videos because he's not that nerdy. He doesn't like to read, so yeah, I had to stick with YouTube videos. Yeah, I did use the research online, and I do recommend it.
Getting back to the translation point, translating officials into your own language from English, it would take a lot of time and effort. So that's definitely understandable as well. And then Emery, what about you?
Not so much to help explain, but I did end up sending a lot of online resources, more like academic stuff, to my one friend, because he was curious in that. Just because he's a nerdy guy, he's a scientific guy, so he just wanted to read that type of stuff. But I didn't get it just to help me explain, because I explained fine to them. They understood fine when I explained. But yeah, I sent my one friend a bunch of studies and stuff and online resources, more like academic, certified ones, that he could read up on.
We have another question from the audience. Has your relationship changed with these people after you've told them? Have they been more understanding of any of your issues associated with maladaptive daydreaming?
As for let's start with my asshole friend. Yeah, his attitude didn't really change. The other two, I didn't really like their attitude towards me after I told them because they showed me too much sympathy. It's not even. I didn't feel like their friend anymore. I just feel like they're my therapist now, and they don't joke about things that offend me, or they don't say offensive joke towards me anymore. You know what I mean. So yeah, I had to tell them to stop. I'm normal. I'm a normal person. I'm okay, man. There's nothing wrong with me. So yeah, they a little bit changed their attitude towards me. My mom, obviously, she was really worried. She actually had a nervous breakdown in front of me, because she actually thought I was possessed. So yeah, I had to obviously calm her down, and it didn't. We picked up from there. We were cool with it. She understood some of it. I mean, she obviously still doesn't understand what it is or what I'm doing, but she sometimes she just barges in to the room, finds me, doing stuff. So yeah, it didn't really change that much apart from simple stuff. Yeah, that doesn't it's not enough to cause me regret. So yeah, it's not that big of a deal when it comes to the relationship changing.
I don't want to speak for you again, Emery, but you had no regrets.
No.
You did talk to your therapist about it too, though. Is there anything that changed there?
No, because I was like first or second session. There was no normal yet. There wasn't really an established relationship yet. Because there was still when she was still getting to know me. So not really there now. Though I doubt it would have anyways, because when like I got my other diagnosis with other things, that didn't change things either.
What about you, Nim?
With my friends, not really, no. Because again, we were kind of sharing our individual mental health concerns. And I mean, it maybe deepened our bond. Like, that's just, things that happen with time kind of thing. So, no, it didn't change my relationship with my friends in any meaningful way. With my therapist, I was actually seeing her for already a year and a half by that point when I told her. So I think it didn't change our relationship, but it did bring it into central focus where we would touch on it more. And I think it improved because I think before I was like debating if I want to continue with that therapist or not, if she would understand me. I think it improved our relationship. With my mother, I think it got dodgy for a little bit. Like for a while, she was just very confused and very concerned. She was wondering if I needed to go on medication or something. But I think once she got a better understanding of it, things kind of resumed as they were before, but with like this extra context. So no, I think overall, not really. And nothing definitely not in a bad way. And if anything, it improved any of my relationships. It didn't damage my relationships at all.
Excellent. And we do have not a question, but a comment from the audience that it's also okay not to tell certain people in your life.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I mean, I want to add to that is like I have a bunch of people in my life who I care about very deeply would don't want to tell about this because either we don't have the rapport, or I guess it just doesn't matter in that context, or I just don't trust them enough. There's so many reasons. Like it's not necessary to tell. It should be within your comfort level.
I think another thing that also makes it really difficult is that, maladaptive daydreamers don't know what to expect. We don't know what to expect for other people's, their reactions because I'm thinking of a lot of LGBT videos on YouTube where people record the reactions from their parents or whatever when they come out. But for us, there's no footage out there, or there's no one out there really, having an actual base of what they can expect when they tell people. So for us, it just adds that extra layer of uncertainty, which makes it a bit more scary, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, just in this little group of 5 people, it's ranged from like totally fine friend banter to demonic possession. Like that's a pretty wide range.
Yeah, there's something I want to add on here. My experience is my environment rather is very different from yours. I think because if I go around telling people that I'm maladaptive daydreaming, I would literally get demonic possession everywhere I go, unless they're pretty good friends. So yeah, I really can't. I can't share this with many people because I mean, sharing. I haven't even shared my social anxiety disorder with my mom because she always attributes my shyness, as she calls it, as a lack of character on my behalf, and the usual insults and stuff like that. Yeah, I basically have to stay hidden in the closet.
Mental health stigma is very real, and
Yeah.
I mean, even from the community that I was brought up in, mental health is really not discussed, and medicine is really stigmatized. Um, and I mean, I'm really lucky that I was able to get the positive reaction I did. So, I mean, I relate to Abraham there. Like, culture matters, and I think it's an LGBT example is really cool because like depending on what culture you're in, we're gonna get very different reactions.
Yep.
I mean, we do have a couple of other cultures represented here. There's we're from 5 different countries.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, North America, I mean, Canada and the USA aren't terribly different, I guess, in their approach to mental health. I don't even know what South Africa is like. I mean, is there anything you want to pop in about that, Levi?
Yeah, I mean, South Africa has what, like 11 official languages, right? So we have a whole bunch of cultures. And the problem with that is that it's sort of a weird mix between what Abraham said versus, a more Western approach. So there's really no certainty. Even if you tell like the very I can almost say conservative, Afrikaans like farmer type people, it's for them it's like, oh, boys don't cry, it's that whole thing. Like they're very rigid and very set in stone. But then when you tell other people, then you might get a better result. But it also, yeah, it's like Abram said, culture, it really matters. So it makes it quite difficult. I feel like mental health overall quite is doing all right in South Africa, but it depends on the culture as well, because it can either go one of many ways. So yeah, that's about it for South Africa, at least. It really depends on the people who you're surrounded with, how you grew up, and all that type of stuff. But I do feel that, the country is growing with the destroying the whole stigma behind it and things like that. So yeah.
I mean, I'm coming from more of an Asian perspective, and I it's pretty much the same thing, right? Like there's a huge emphasis on mental fortitude and having strength, and any sort of mental health weakness is frowned upon and better hidden. And I think mental health in general becomes a really touchy subject because nobody wants to openly acknowledge that even it even exists. Like a lot of, I think, communities back home for me, they would say things like, "Oh, mental health is a Western problem that only the rich and privileged have," which is not true. It's I think one thing I think an Asian friend of mine once said was, "It's a white people problem," which it's no, it's not. And it's looked down as like a weakness, and if you have it, that means you're somehow defective character, I think the way Abraham put it. And so, yeah, it becomes really hard to talk about, especially for something that's not even diagnosable.
So I think we're really lucky on this episode to have a few people from a few different cultures who can speak to other things. So I guess to close out, specifically like Abraham and Nymph, would you have any advice to give to somebody from a culture where these things are a lot more difficult to talk about?
I think a good starting point would be to figure out the person you want to tell where they stand on these issues. I think I was talking to my mother about mental health stuff, like the general politics of it, long before I told her. So that made me more comfortable and, helped me know where she stood on those issues. And I think the other thing that can help you is to, you know, internalize first that these beliefs are not true. You are not defective of a character. You are not a bad person for having mental health issues. And once you can convince yourself, it becomes a lot easier to tell other people. Because even if they do react badly, they can't affect your self image. At least that would be my tip for anybody. It's a hard, and I think we have a long road ahead of us. But I think that's a good starting point.
It's a one-way street. Whatever you say, you cannot take back. I have a lot of things that I people don't know about. But it's okay, man. It's okay. You don't have to tell other people. It can be overwhelming. I mean, you don't want to walk in the street and everybody calling you demonically possessed and crazy. It really gets ugly, and I don't want anyone dealing with that. yeah, you need to identify the risks. Just tell the people that you trust, that you truly trust, because you don't want to take that risk of things going south. I understand that it's hard. Choose the people you tell your problems to very, very carefully. You don't want things going south. It's okay. It's okay to keep it hidden. You can just do it in an online community. Just gotta keep moving forward.
Online communities are an option. If you, like Abraham said, just need to talk to somebody or want to practice talking to somebody, there are communities that we can link to in the description all over the internet. There's a subreddit, a Facebook group. There are a couple of websites in several different languages, and there are Discord servers where you can even, we're on a Discord server right now. You can speak to people on voice chat. Nymph actually has a blog, Trapped in Daydreams. We'll link to that as well.
I even wrote an article on how to tell someone about this. Like, it's just saying, like, I wrote about this topic. Sorry, it was a bit of a shill there.
A lot of people do have stories to tell, but it is difficult to find people to talk to, tell people about their paracosms or their daydreams and things like that. So I think that it will give them a good platform, or rather a really good safe space to openly talk about their daydreams. Great. Well, that does it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed, please feel free to subscribe to the podcast or hit the follow button, or whichever platform you're listening on. Go ahead and do that. We do have a bunch of episodes in the future coming out with a variety of different topics. So yeah, and check out the description. It will have a whole bunch of links to the Discord, links to people's YouTube channels, blogs, all that type of stuff. So yeah, but that is it for this episode. Thanks again for listening. Goodbye.